Here we go, Arnold. We're talking about Hey Arnold.
Arnold!
I've had that theme song stuck in my head all day.
I've had all the music stuck in my
There's
head.
a boodle-leedy bop-a-dee bop-ba-dee-bop-ba-doo. Ba-da-ba-da-dee-ba-da-da. All right.
Jim Lang is a gift to humanity.
Hey Arnold as a whole was a gift. Hey Arnold is one of those shows that we're talking about where we assume that everybody's got at least a basic working knowledge of. This is 90s Nick. This is the stuff that's, people our age, which is to say millennials, have really built up as this kind of golden standard. And some of it really holds up. Some of it is decent. Some of it is crap. Hey Arnold is really good still.
I think Hey Arnold honestly gets underrated because it's roped in nostalgically in the same quality tier as other shows that were just not as good as it. But they remember it all equal as the same massive 90s animation. And it's like, no, Hey Arnold was so much better. You don't have to look at it nostalgically because it's actually that good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. It was super...
Although it also gives me nostalgic feelings, but for completely unrelated reasons. And actually, let's start talking about this. This show is about a version of Brooklyn that really doesn't exist anymore. This show is about pre-gentrified Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's about what Brooklyn was that attracted so many hip people to come to Brooklyn to try to experience, and in coming there, ruined. Destroyed. This is a show that takes place in a neighborhood in the heart of Brooklyn that's populated mostly by working-class stiffs and immigrants from all over the damn world.
Immigrants from all over the country.
Well, to be fair, the city doesn't actually have a name, and the creator based it partly on Brooklyn, but also a lot on his hometown of like Seattle and Portland as well. So
really, that's weird because like for some reason I was just like, yep, that's New York.
That's very weird to me too because it's so overwhelmingly Brooklyn.
I agree. But yeah, Bartlett describes it as an amalgam of large northern cities I have loved, including Seattle, my hometown, Portland, where I went to art school, and Brooklyn, the bridge, the brownstones, the subway. But, I mean, to me, when I was a kid, I always just thought it was New York as well.
Yeah, me too.
They never give the city a name because they don't have to. It's clearly Brooklyn.
I didn't realize they never referred to it by name.
No, they don't.
Wow.
And then, like, in the Christmas special, they also kind of clumsily don't ever call Vietnam.
Even though...
In the Veterans Day episode, they say Vietnam a bunch.
And there was a joke in that episode, Heat, where Mr. Wynn specifically said, I was in Vietnam then, so... But anyway, starting with the setting, I think, is a good place to start, because so much of what defines the show from a lot of other shows is its setting, is its environment.
Because there's never been a show set in New York City.
For kids.
Well,
I'm not even sure that's true. Ninja Turtles.
But I mean, it's not just that it's set in the city, it's that the city is actively like a part of the show. It's not just like a device for them to go on adventures. Like it's
like
so
it was in
much of
Ninja Turtles. We talked about this in our Ninja Turtles episode. What fucking version of New York is that? There are no people. There are no people, and it's easy to get places. And everybody talks like Californians.
But in Hey Arnold, the city it's like its own character. Like it defines so much of these kids' life. Like it's just not something that would exist if the setting was different. Like if it was in the suburbs or whatever, it wouldn't be the same show. Because so much of what makes the show special and so much of what drives the show is where it takes place.
And that's just like a good pro tip for anybody trying to develop a story. Don't skimp on setting. If your story could take place literally anywhere, then your setting's not strong enough.
So a little bit of history. This show was created by Craig Bartlett, and he got the idea for the show when he was working on Pee-wee's Playhouse doing claymation shorts. He cut a little chunk of clay out in like a wedge shape and made that into a head and created this character. He created the pilot episode in 1993, and then the official production began in 94, and it was transformed from claymation to cell animation. Before then, they made, I believe, 3 shorts in claymation, one of which was aired during the interstitials on Sesame Street.
Yeah, I remember that.
I vaguely remember that.
When I made that connection, it blew my mind because it's very different. It was like a kind of surreal thing of like him going through some dream sequence and all these like different like talking fish and shit saying, "Hey Arnold."
Because that was like early, like and you can see remnants of that in the first few episodes, in like the first season where it was like he would still have those fantasies, like that was part of his character. He would daydream, but then they kind of got rid of that.
Yeah, originally the claymation shorts starred a character named Penny, and Arnold was just her friend. But apparently the executives were more impressed with Arnold than Penny. So he made it about Arnold.
There we go.
And then Penny died.
Yeah. Bartlett said, "We did a lot of talking about who Arnold is. We came up with a reluctant hero who keeps finding himself responsible for solving something, making the right choices, doing the right thing." And, after he created Arnold himself, had to create supporting characters, so he drew influences from his childhood. A lot of the characters are an amalgam of people I knew when I was a kid. The girls in Hey Arnold are girls that either liked or didn't like me when I was at school. Famously, the story goes he created the first episode of Hey Arnold in his living room. Showed it to producers at Nickelodeon. A year later, the network decided to begin work on the series. And the claymation shorts were from 88 to 91. The shorts were Arnold Escapes from Church, The Arnold Waltz, and Arnold Rides a Chair, which is the one that was on Sesame Street in 1991.
I want to see Arnold Escapes from Church.
I need to see that.
The very first Arnold cell animation piece was an 8-minute short entitled just Arnold that was essentially what later became the pilot that was shown in theaters before Nickelodeon's first feature-length film, Harriet the Spy.
Ah, fuck.
And that went off from there. So this was a 90. Like, even though I wasn't watching the show in the 90s, I was watching in the early 2000s, this show had the bulk of its production in the mid-90s. Which you can see in the character design, because for years I thought Arnold was wearing a kilt, but he's actually just wearing a grungy 90s plaid shirt with a sweater on top.
Yeah, I always was wondering that too, and the only reason I didn't think it was a kilt, because like I was a very non-committal child. I was like, I would look at it and go, that looks like a kilt to me, but there's zero context given for why he would be wearing a kilt, so let me just watch this show and just wait for them to actually bring it up. And they did, and it was a shirt. So I wasn't wrong, because I never even guessed.
And that's the lesson I think we can all take away from this podcast.
You can't fail if you are inactive. If you do nothing, then you can't, there's no risk.
Another fun fact is that Arnold started, even before claymation, were comic strips that appeared in the Simpsons Illustrated magazine, courtesy of Matt Groening, who is Craig's brother-in-law.
Oh, he's related to, it's Groening, which, I mean,
Groening.
it's not your fault. It's spelled Groening.
Okay.
At this point, it's Groening.
Yeah, Craig is married to Lisa Groening, which is, who Lisa Simpson is based off of.
He's married to Lisa Simpson, you guys.
That's crazy. I did tell you it's Groening, and you said Groening again.
Oh, Groening. Whatever. That's why in the end credits of Arnold, there often will be, like, with special thanks to Matt Groening, because, being in the industry, he helped his brother-in-law out, which is pretty cool of him.
Special thanks to letting me bang your sister.
So, for those of you who don't know anything about Hey Arnold, maybe you're not a millennial. Maybe you were an 80s kid.
Go to bed. Do your homework. Eat your peas.
And you're wondering, what the hell is this Hey Arnold thing about? Like, I remember, like, Nostalgia Critic, made a joke about, like, what is the deal with this show? Where's the adventure? Where's the fun? It's just about
I'm
a
old.
kid. But the show is about Arnold, but not really about Arnold, actually. He's a 4th grader who lives with his paternal grandparents at their boarding house in their Brooklyn-esque city. And it's really more about the people that Arnold attracts in his life, like all the people in the city, you know, the neighborhood folks, his friends from school, his classmates, random adults, the boarders that live in the boarding house where he lives, and sort of it's about their stories and how he sort of ends up helping them. Because Arnold himself as a character, he is really more of an agent than like, you know, like this person who goes through this arc or this growth. You know, he's sort of the agent in which we explore these adventures in the city and meet all these crazy people and learn about their stories and their tragedies and their ups and downs. In fact, a lot of people have argued that Helga Pataki, which is one of the other main characters, probably is the second main character, and even probably has more screen time than Arnold does, or at least is the second one to have more screen time than Arnold does, can be a main character in a sense, because she's the one who has a lot of the conflict, and, you know, she's the one who... I mean, that's why it's called Hey Arnold, because she's the one trying to get his attention. And everybody seems to be trying to get this kid's attention. You know, he seems to be friends with everybody. Everybody wants his help.
Let's start talking about Helga, because she really is the most interesting character in this show.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Voiced by Francesca Smith, who, looking at this briefly, nothing else.
Yeah,
this was her big thing.
I looked at a lot of these actors, and all the child actors, like, pretty much none of them went on to do much at all, which is...
She was one of the Ashleys on Recess, which looks like, looking at this, seems to be her other biggest thing. She was on 8 episodes of New Batman as Annie. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Wait, which Batman?
New Batman Adventures.
Oh. Don't know who that is.
Alright. Yeah, so Helga Pataki is in love with Arnold, and as the kids say, she's doing that whole tsundere thing. Where she pretends to hate him but secretly loves him. And I normally find that trope fucking terrible. I hate it. It's bad. But they write Helga... Part of the thing with why Helga works is that they lean into it with such shameless gusto that the bit works every goddamn time. Because what they'll do is she'll like you get whatever Arnold's plot is. He'll bump into Helga in the street or in the classroom. It's like, get the fuck out of the way, asshole, or whatever. It's rated. It's rated Y7.
How much money do I have to pay her to record that for me in Helga's voice?
She said crap before on the show.
Oh my god, she did.
Yeah, she said crap.
I was thinking today is like if like you just recut the theme song to, instead of being Hey Arnold, just be Hey asshole. But yeah, she would bump into him and be like, I hate you, get out of my face. And then she would hide behind a trash can or whatever and do this goddamn Shakespearean soliloquy of why she loves him so much. And what's interesting is that the things that she found attractive about this guy are his like actual positive qualities. His undepletable optimism. That's mostly it. Different facets of that.
Yeah,
Arnold dares you to care about the people on the streets. I might have heard Under Pressure on my way home from work today.
It's, you know, her like, oh, Arnold, how I hate you. And yet...
And then it's the same, she's got theme music. She's the only character with theme music.
Yep.
It's always, and yet...
She has this locket with his face, and she's very creepy and stalkery. She has all these crazy shrines of him in her room. She had this one made up of used bubblegum from him that she had gathered. In the movie, she had what looked like...
Dude, the movies was like whole hog.
The
like,
movies was
Jesus
bananas.
Christ.
It was a stuffed bear and an eagle for his hair, and I in the background she had like one of his pairs of underwear like pinned behind glass.
It was like framed.
Yes.
Where'd she get
Like
it? Oh, she might. I guess she got that when she like broke into his house.
Which she does multiple times, and she also searches through his garbage.
Oh, can I just say one thing? With New York real estate the way it is, Arnold's room would cost
Arnold's room.
Arnold's room would cost like $2,000 a month.
Yeah, not in the 90s, and also like
I'm just saying, he lives in
the best room in the entire city.
That is
of New York
primo
City.
real estate.
Maybe
He's got
Arnold's
like a
room...
couch that's like flipped in the wall and like presses a button and like comes out of the wall. He's got this awesome skylight and he can climb up and get straight onto the roof. He's got like the sickest stereo system any fourth grader has ever had, and he uses it to play smooth jazz.
Wouldn't his room take up like multiple floors?
Yeah,
it's like the attic apparently, but like refurbished.
Yeah, let's get back onto Helga though, because I have a feeling I don't want us to get too sidetracked.
Okay.
The show manages to keep this bit working the whole way through. The show got 5 seasons for a total of 100 episodes, 187 segments.
And a movie.
Does one of those episodes... Did they count the TV movie as an episode? They do.
Which one was the TV movie?
That's
there was
the
no
Journal.
TV movie.
The Journal. That was an hour.
That was a special. Not
that
a
was
TV
an hour long.
It was a special.
All right.
Semantics.
And then, yeah, theatrical movie that, according to the box office figures, Nina and I are the only human beings on Earth who saw in theaters.
I didn't.
It did really bad.
I mean, I just recently rewatched it, and, like, it's not great.
It's good.
Honestly, like,
I liked enough of it.
I felt that, like, I walked away from it going, like, that was, like, that was exactly what I expected it to be. I really think they couldn't have done it any better. It wouldn't have really felt Hey Arnoldy if they tried to actually make it a movie. So I feel like the only other thing they could have done was not have a theatrical Hey Arnold movie.
Well, it wasn't originally intended to be one. It was intended to be a TV movie.
But I think it would have been better as that.
Me too, but Nick at that time was doing this whole movie studios thing, and every cartoon was getting a movie, and none of them were making money, so they stopped doing that shit.
Did Rugrats
Except for the Rugrats movie. But by then, they had already gotten to, like, the 3rd Rugrats movie, and they were doing Wild Thornberrys and Jimmy Neutron, and, like, they were trying to push this Nickelodeon movie studio thing. So they pressured them into making a theatrical film.
That would explain, like, the second it started, I was like... This is not an animated movie budget whatsoever. Like, I immediately recognized that.
Yeah, like, it had a higher budget than the show. Sometimes to its detriment, because, like, there was that part on the balcony where, like, their hair is all, like, in the wind and everything, and it betrays how 2D their designs are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just... I don't know if it was my computer, but, like, it looked really funky on Netflix. Like, the color saturation was weird.
Yeah, that was some standard def horse shit.
Yeah.
I feel like I was watching YouTube.
And, like, the colored pencil backgrounds that are normally really charming in the TV show, like, in the movie, just didn't really work.
One brief aside before we get back to the show. You know what's actually really remarkable about the Rugrats movies? And this is one of the few remarkable things about Rugrats to this day, is that those movies changed the status quo of the show, and then when the show came back, they went from the new status quo.
I thought you were going to say the remarkable thing was that in the first movie, Busta Rhymes sings a rap song about Reptar.
Oh my god! I am stopping this podcast, and I'm going to listen to that. I'm not, but that's very important to me. I'm going to queue up that YouTube video.
Okay. So I guess let's talk about, like, the tone of the show, like, the feel of the show.
Jazz.
Urban jazz fusion.
Smooth jazz.
But, like, good smooth jazz.
Yeah.
Not, like, elevator smooth jazz, but, like,
It really is. It's jazz fusion.
Yeah.
It gets you jazzed.
Stop it.
But as a kid, watching this show, it didn't stand out to me as much because it wasn't as loud, you know, it wasn't as colorful. It was never the kind of show that I tuned in to watch specifically. It was always that show where I was watching something else and then it came on afterwards. It was like, oh, cool, Hey Arnold, I'll watch Hey Arnold. But as I grew older, I found, like, the show that stuck with me more than any other show was this show. And a lot of it had to do with the tone and the themes, because it really played with a lot of realistic themes and problems that a lot of cartoons, especially of that era, just wasn't interested in tackling.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sort of serious things and a lot of like real kind of adult problems that these kids were sort of swept up in. And it was sort of fascinating as a suburban kid, or as a kid who, you know, came from a more stable environment, to sort of see some of this stuff and to see, you know, working class boarders and dysfunctional marriages and dysfunctional families and broken families and all this stuff. And I would go on like these nostalgic tirades where I would just remember every single aspect of the show, even though it wasn't my favorite show. When I was a kid and I would say what my favorite show was, I would say the Powerpuff Girls. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I feel like this show reflects more of who I am as a person now than the Powerpuff Girls did. Even though it was my favorite as a kid.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to compare it to the Powerpuff Girls and the other stuff that was going on in the 90s, especially on Nickelodeon. It's much less kinetic than those shows, where it was a lot more laid back. That was the thing that really characterized a lot of 90s stuff, is that it was, you know, really crazy. It was really loud, you know. The most extreme example is, of course, like fucking Ren and Stimpy, but also like Rocco was doing that, Angry Beavers were doing that. Dexter was doing SpongeBob, which is SpongeBob bridged, I think, two eras. But yeah, SpongeBob was definitely doing that. Dexter was doing that. Ed and Eddie, all those.
Basically every cartoon except Hey Arnold.
Hey Arnold was
like, we're just listing cartoons.
Yeah, maybe
now.
you could say Rugrats was a little more laid back, which is an interesting exception.
Yeah, Rugrats was
I feel
more
like
in
it was
that same
only.
vein.
I feel like it was only laid back because the babies are incapable of running.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Craig Bartlett did work on the Rugrats show. He did writing for that show.
Yeah. And it's interesting, though, because, you know, we're talking about everything that defines this era, but Rugrats was Nickelodeon's big moneymaker until SpongeBob.
Which
is really weird.
Reflects its change.
Yeah, it's really weird to look back on, like, it's strange how marketable that show was.
Yeah, like, what the hell? Now that you say that, it's like, wow, wait. I think we all just, like, everybody just as kids, everybody just accepts what's big, but now I'm thinking back on it, and I'm like, why the fuck did Rugrats work?
Yeah. I mean, looking back, the things that I liked most about Rugrats were the weird, subtle things. The things I liked most about Rugrats is that it was a show about first-time parents.
Yeah. But we are probably going to do an episode on Rugrats, so save all that
I would like to
stuff
revisit
again.
Rugrats, because I haven't really watched a lot of it in a long time.
But yeah, Hey Arnold, it was subdued. You know, it was about real people and real problems, and sometimes it had these sort of urban legend things going on.
Could you call it? Was there almost like magical realism in it? I'm still trying to understand.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
I
got it. I
I
know what magical realism is. I'm finally learning.
I mean, that's how Bartlett himself described it, and like sort of these legends would sort of turn into this kind of magical realism thing where like things were sort of ambiguous. You didn't know what was real or what was just people's imagination or imagination coming to life or whatever. I mean, like the Pigeon Man is a pretty good example, and you know, that's one of those striking episodes I really remembered as a kid, and I still remember every time I look out my window and I see this guy down on my street who has pigeons on his roof, and he sends them out every day at like 5 o'clock to spin around in a circle, and I always think about the Pigeon Man from Hey Arnold. But the ending to that episode, you know, is kind of implausible.
Heartbreaking.
But
it's
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's implausible, but it's very sad.
It's not as sad as it was going to be, because apparently I read that he was going to jump.
Oh my god!
But Nickelodeon was like, no.
You can't fucking do that.
Like that. Honestly, that is the one. That is basically the only censorship decision I've ever heard where I go, "Good job, good job, Nickelodeon. You did it. You did
Actually,
good call."
They actually wanted to go very far with a lot of things in this show,
sure.
and Nickelodeon was like, you know, no, you can't say that Miriam is an alcoholic explicitly.
Oh, well, yeah.
You know, you can't explicitly say that Mr. Simmons is gay and he's in the closet and going through that crap, and just a lot of like little tiny subtle things.
I do think that is always the best case scenario of censorship, is that it forces you to be subtle and work around things, because like Because, like, Miriam being an alcoholic, I don't think it would have been as impressively done if they just let her be an alcoholic, because it's like, I don't know, it makes that whole thing where it's like, kids who don't know what that is, like, they won't even see it, but then, like, kids watching will be like, that's mom, like...
That's grandpa.
Yeah, or that. Yeah, any family member. Yeah, they can see it immediately and be like, okay, I know exactly what this is.
But they did have alcohol consumption in a few episodes without explicitly making a joke about it being grape juice. Like in the Thanksgiving episode, Mr. Simmons' family was drinking wine, and they didn't have a grape juice bottle; it was wine. And there was an episode where we saw Harold's family have dinner, and Harold was actually drinking the wine too. Because, I guess, coming from a Jewish family, that's a lot less of a weird thing. But, yeah, there were just small little things like that they didn't, they didn't draw attention to it, but they didn't cover it up either. It just existed as the kids understood it.
Well, I have to imagine since they had stuff like, hey, what if this guy jumps off the freaking building, then... It might have been that technique that people do in shows where they'll put something up for the censors that is so bad that it can't possibly pass, and by comparison, everything they actually want to get through looks totally fine, so they let it go. Because it's not as bad as that other idea they had.
Because apparently there was another thing that got dropped. There was a tenant at the boarding house named Lana who disappeared after season 1. And supposedly there was, a subplot with her, falling in love with Arnold or something really weird and like that.
Oh,
and Nick
God.
was like, absolutely not. So they just totally got rid of that character because they weren't allowed to do the arc that they had in mind.
Good?
Yeah, they did the opposite where he has a crush on Julia Louis-Dreyfus as a substitute teacher. That's fine. That's real. That's not a crime. That's not... That's like a rite of passage, and they handle it in a good way.
Yeah, but
what the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly what it was, but they had an idea for this character that was apparently super not okay for Nick, and Nick said no.
Maybe
so they got rid of the character.
That's such a vague thing. Maybe it was literally like a 2-minute conversation in a writing meeting, as opposed to something they actually tried to push. Maybe somebody just went like, hey, what if this? And then somebody just immediately was like, no, we probably shouldn't. Yeah, you're right. Do we know for a fact that this was an idea that they tried to push?
It's something that
I don't know.
Craig Bartlett has said.
According to Craig Bartlett, Lana was meant to have a character role in the series. The writers and Craig initially wanted her to have a crush on Arnold. She would ask him to do favors and would make Arnold feel a little uncomfortable. However, Nickelodeon turned down the concept for obvious reasons, so the writers attempted to rewrite her character. In the end, they were not satisfied with any results, so they just scrapped her.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, wowie zowie.
This is not where I was expecting this episode to go at all.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's too real.
Wasn't it a huge fucking thing for you when you realized that Miriam Pataki was an alcoholic?
Yeah, it was.
It was huge
because it was funny. She made me laugh, but then when I thought about it, I was like, oh wait, this is abusive.
Yeah. No, Helga's entire family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Helga's family is some really brutal shit.
Yeah, and Craig wanted to make a spin-off series called The Patakis that would be on Nick at Night, so it would be more for older kids or teenagers, just about the Pataki family once Helga became a teenager, and would get into the serious shit and wouldn't have to censor as much as his ideas. Miriam would be attending Alcoholics Anonymous.
Bob would probably sell flip phones.
I still don't know what a beeper is. And I, recently got into 90s hip-hop. I still don't know what a beeper is.
Well, I always think about beepers and doctors. Still. Yeah.
Doctors and, are beepers and pagers different?
No. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think pagers is, more what they're called, and beeper is, a colloquial,
Yeah.
Because they beep.
Yeah.
They're go beep.
I'm surprised it's American. That sounds so British.
Did they ever say why that show didn't come about? Because I have a couple of good guesses. Namely, brand integrity.
like 90% of all spin-offs never happen.
That's also true. But I also can understand Nickelodeon
It
not
turned out
wanting
to be too dark for Nickelodeon's intended audience.
Yeah.
I believe that.
It was also offered to music channel MTV during the time with things... They were trying to go on, like, the Beavis and Butthead thing. However, MTV declined it because the show was too similar to Daria. So they're like, no. We don't want another show that's kind of like Daria.
Why?
I don't know. But, you know, Craig Bartlett's idea was that most of the kids, including Arnold, had moved away. So Helga would be the star of the series. She would be 15, still crazy about Arnold, but they had actually dated at that point, but had broken up. She's friends with Lila, actually. And, like... You know, and Gerald and Phoebe are like a cool couple that's sort of kept in the background.
Aw, cute.
Like, they had all these ideas. Yeah, beepers morphed into cell phones, and he would look a lot like Tony Soprano.
Or like a shitty tracksuit.
Yeah. Olga would be back from college and pursuing an acting career on off Broadway.
Oh, that's great.
Like, this sounds like it would have been super great.
It sounds like it would have been super great, but at the same time, like, especially if they got the deal with MTV, it probably would have been, like, way too dark to be like, this is Hey Arnold's sequel? Like, whoa.
But honestly, I feel like I would have believed it, because by the time that show was gonna come out, the kids who grew up with it would already be older. And, you know, all those hints and signs were there. It's not like this was a happy, happy joy show where, like, everything was butterflies and rainbows all the time. It was gritty. It was dirty. There was tragedy. There was crazy people. The fucking Jolly Ollie man terrified the shit out of me.
Do you remember that episode with the haunted... Do you remember that episode with the haunted train?
Yeah.
That scared the shit out of you for, like, a year.
I know. I know it did.
I remember that, asshole.
But, like, the first episode, Downtown as Fruits, they got lost in a shitty part of the town and got drug money, presumably. Like, they got confused for, like, the regular pickup people and got loaded down with all this fucking cash, and then the people figured out that the cash went to the wrong guys and were, like, chasing down these fucking kids. There was episodes where Arnold got fucking mugged in, like, the middle of an alley, like...
Mugging happened a lot. Like, there was the karate episode, there was the Monkey Man episode.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, this was a world where the kids could pretty much wander around wherever the heck they wanted after school.
It was a pre-paranoia world, I guess.
Yeah, well, it was an idealized world, and that's what Craig said. He wanted it to be like this sort of ideal free world where, you know, kids can be left to their own devices. It still can be a scary world, but it's nowhere near as scary as the real world. But it's probably as close as you're going to get to an idealized kids cartoon.
And he wanted the pedophile tenant in his ideal world?
Oh my god.
I mean... Okay. I
Moving
can't
on.
justify that shit. I mean, I think he just wanted to tackle, like... I mean, you think about the other boarders and shit. Like, you think about Oscar and his wife. Like, in that episode where
We've got every character. What else is there?
When that episode where Gerald comes to move into the boarding house because he's fed up with living at home, and Arnold introduces him to all the boarders.
That was cool.
They're having that fight where Susie, I think her name is.
Yes.
Is like, you know, I should have listened to my mom. She warned me about men like you and that you were going to trick me and you were just using me. And then dinner that night, Oscar says, you know, asks Susie to pass the salt and is like, could you pass the salt, my little green card?
Oh my god.
Green card.
This show's bananas.
The show, if you seriously go back and look at every little detail, all the weird sexual innuendos that Grandpa makes.
Oh yeah, like, I saw a couple of those. Like, in Veterans Day and in the Journal.
Yeah. Like, this show kind of went there. Yeah. Without explicitly saying anything.
My favorite Grandpa bit is when he claims to have punched Hitler.
Oh, that was great.
And then he backpedals and said it was Goebbels.
Yeah.
Arnold's like, Grandpa, you did not punch Hitler.
That was great, where Grandpa's a war hero because he food poisoned the entire Panzer Division. That bit where he's just explaining what sham is while not looking at the goddamn road.
It's great. I mean, the specials in this show were all really good.
Yeah, we watch the Christmas special every year.
Yeah, and I guess
that's really why we're doing this episode.
Yeah, that's why.
The Christmas special.
Yeah, the Christmas special because it's so good, and also because New York makes me holiday nostalgic, I guess.
So I guess let's focus on the Christmas special because it's one of the best episodes. It's just called Arnold's Christmas, and it's actually about Mr. Nguyen, the Vietnamese boarder that, he's sort of in the background. He hangs out with Ernie, and they sort of usually make fun of Oscar for being an asshole.
Yeah, it's the chucklehead club of those three guys.
Yeah.
Who's
it's like a diverse King of the Hill.
Their shit in the movie was incredible.
Yes.
When they tried to blow up the street.
They blow up the street and Oscar's like, what if we... Because they're trying to, not get the house bulldozed. What if we cover the boarding house in vanishing cream? Then it will be invisible and no one can see it. Oscar, you idiot! What if it rains? All the vanishing cream will wash away. Dom Irera as Ernie Potts is also really good.
Ernie's probably one of my favorite tenants.
Ernie's great. And then Oscar Kokoschka, I guess we should say, is played by Steve Vixen.
Who, I just looked him up. He was one of the main writers on the show.
He was the main writer after Craig. When I look in the credits, he was always there. And he and Craig pretty much wrote most of everything. And
he sadly died this summer.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm. That was sad. Just like this show.
But
who voices Mr. Nguyen?
I think he's a Vietnamese guy.
Boan Coleman. The only other thing he's done of note is he was a supporting role in Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Great!
Yeah, so this episode is about... We learn a lot about Mr. Nguyen. It opens with the borders and all these very, nice, Christmassy in the city scenes. And in the boarding house, they do a Secret Santa for their Christmas, and Arnold gets Mr. Nguyen. And he realizes that he doesn't really know very much about Mr. Nguyen, and notices that he's, super sad around this time of year, and just goes and visits him to see if he can learn a little bit more about him and what to get him, and we end up learning this incredibly tragic story that makes me cry about Mr. Nguyen's backstory and how he came to live in the city. He lived in Vietnam during the war, and he had a daughter, but, the war was the war, and he was desperate to get away and to escape and to raise her, and he eventually ended up giving her to a soldier to take away, and he hadn't seen her for 20 years, but came to the city because he was told by the soldier that they would take her there. So Arnold gets it in his big, altruistic head that he's going to reunite these two. And he goes on a crazy run around the city. He goes to, what's the name of the office? This government office.
It's like some kind of Department of Records.
Yeah, Department of Records. Strikes
every big government building, fictional or real, is basically the exact same place to me. I just put it all as big government, lots of files.
It may as well have been the Super DMV.
But you never expect to see a government building like that in a kids show.
Yeah.
With the bureaucracy and the rundown guy who just doesn't even care about his
job. Yeah, literally, I kind of imagine he's literally the only employee in that building.
Everybody else is drinking their spiked eggnog at the Christmas party. And then he does a run around trying to get all these presents on Christmas Eve, and there's some nice jazz fusion renditions of Christmas songs. Meanwhile, Helga is trying to figure out what to get Arnold, and all kind of comes to a head, and it's just really, really beautiful. I adore it so much. So I highly suggest that you watch it this holiday season if you haven't seen it in a long time, because it will touch you.
All of this show is on Amazon Prime streaming. If you have that, if you have Amazon Prime, you have Amazon Prime Instant Video. I know it streams to the Wii U. It might stream to other consoles. Do your own goddamn research.
The movie's on Netflix.
The movie's on Netflix. The show used to be on Netflix, but isn't anymore because licensing is weird.
Yeah. But a lot of the specials tended to be the strongest episode. The Thanksgiving special was pretty strong with Mr. Simmons' family. The episode with Helga on the couch.
That's like the best episode.
Oh, yeah,
it's kind of the best one. Where Helga finally actually goes to therapy, which is pretty cool. Like, a kid show saying that, like, therapy is, like, normal and okay and good for you.
And helpful.
Because, like, at that age, at Helga's age, like, you know, that was good to know for my own personal life and experience. And we just got to learn so much about Helga and her family, and what used to sort of be played for laughs, like that her whole dysfunctional family was sort of like played for laughs in a way. It wasn't really funny anymore.
Yeah, that episode was probably like the turning point where you're like, oh wait, this is sad.
That could be like the pilot for the Patakis. Like,
yeah, the proto pilot.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, it's like really. It goes into some heavy stuff. It's like, you know, we built this stuff up for last, but, like, this is fucked up shit, and let's actually investigate this. Because you know what? There are kids watching this who might be in a similar boat, and, you know, maybe we can help them out with a fun cartoon.
Or at least acknowledge their existence.
Yeah.
You know. It's like, you compare it to something, say, like, Fairly Odd Parents, where Timmy Turner's life was pretty shitty, but it was all goofs, and it wasn't serious, like, ever. It was, like, unrealistically bad. Like, you know, Vicky was totally not a plausible thing. His parents' negligence, this Pleasantville attitude they had, was, like, totally this goofy thing that wasn't really based in reality.
And that's part of what we said in our Billy and Mandy episode of the tone of cartoons of the oddies, where everybody was an asshole. Yeah. The cartoons were generally more mean-spirited. And Fairly Odd Parents really, really embodied that. And I love Fairly Odd Parents. I think it's freaking hilarious. And I like it even past the point where a lot of people stopped liking it.
Mm-hmm. But this show could be harsh in a pretty kind of realistic way, because the kids all had their moments of being assholes.
Yeah.
Like, the kids could be pretty rough on each other. Even though they were all kind of friends, they were always also picking on each other at the same time. You know, they
sounds like childhood.
Yeah, they had a very sort of realistic kid dynamic where, like, they hung out, but they were kind of shitty to each other at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes they hung out with the bullies.
Yeah, well, because when you're a kid, it's like, you know, you have a limited population pool to pull from. It's like, well, I'm stuck with these jackholes. Let's find a way to coexist. That's basically my entire Scholastic experience.
And you combine that with living in New York City, where it's cost prohibitive to go further than 200 feet away from your house.
Yeah, I mean, the kids made a big deal about going on the subway. Like, they're like, we don't take the subway. Which, if we can't walk there, we don't go.
Yeah.
Like, their lives is pretty much within, like, a few blocks, their neighborhood. And they pretty much stick to their neighborhood. And they all hang out with each other, know each other, because they all went to the same school. You know, in the same parks and stuff. Even though some of them are shitheads. But they're complicated, because some of them can be really shitty, but they can also be kind of redeemable and interesting people. Because they all feel like real kids in a way. Because, like, Harold can be just stupid asshole, but then there are times when Harold is, like, really sweet and you really like Harold. And then there are times where Harold is super annoying. And I think all the kids have their moments like that. They're not just stereotypes. They're not just, like, filling in these roles. They feel pretty well-rounded, especially as the series goes on.
This is one of those shows, and, like, I love shows like this where not even necessarily just reoccurring characters, even like background characters, and they don't even have to have their own episode, but a lot of minor characters get their own episode by the end of the show's run. But even the ones that don't, they still it feels like you could give them their own episode and it would work. Like, everybody's fleshed out.
Yeah.
And it just makes the world all the more realer.
And it does feel like a community. I mean, there's Mr. Green, who owns the butcher shop, there's the mailman, there's the woman who owns the flower shop. Like, they all are cool. Like, everybody knows each other. Like, the Jolly Ollie Man, like, all these people. And, like...
Yeah, I like how everybody knows each other, and yet he's only just the Jolly Ollie Man. He has no identity. He probably sleeps in that truck.
Well, his name is Willie.
Damn it!
But, you know, part of it is because these are kids, too. Like, they have that whole urban Gerald is Gerald is Arnold's best friend. He's, like, the keeper of the urban legends. Like, he tells, like, these tall tales, like, these kid stories, kid legends, like...
Yep.
That one guy who doesn't leave his stoop. That one crazy bird guy that likes birds and, like, you know...
A monkey. What I love is that before he does these urban legends, Sid always is his hype man.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always Sid, and it's always great.
Sid is such a weird character. I never really fully got what even Sid's deal is. Why is he even, like, I don't even know.
Part of, like,
He's
Sid's deal is that he has
shitty kid.
He has, like, a tendency to get really hung up on small things and make an enormous deal out of them. That was a couple episodes.
And he's a tendency to sort of backstab his friends.
Yeah. He's just sort of a little, he's a little shit.
Yeah, he's a little shithead.
You know what was a really good episode was the Carmen episode?
Oh, yeah, what's Opera Arnold?
I get it.
That's what they called it. Oh my God.
What they called it.
Yeah, that's what they called it.
Oh, we're on par. It's a very good episode.
It was an homage.
Yeah.
They were having fun.
Yeah.
That's how I know anything about that musical. This show taught me so much shit.
Oh, watch it again. Like, there's like the guy on the field trip who's trying to explain to the kids what this play is about, and he's like, what's the guy's name? Don Jose? Whatever. The guy is how should I put this? Charmed by Carmen, and he's also in a lot of trouble for doing harm to another woman. And I'm like, holy fuck! Did somebody get raped in that play, or am I?
Welp.
Because that's what that sounds like to me.
I don't know.
I actually don't know about the actual plot, but like, I caught that part
really
where he was
good.
trying to gloss over the plot because I was like, opera's not for fourth graders. Like,
No. You can only get away with it because everything's in a different language.
yeah, exactly.
And Harold as Pagliacci was great.
Oh my god, it was the best part.
Perfect casting.
So good. That's how I knew what Pagliacci was.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
of Harold.
Yeah, it was that, and then 10 years later I saw Watchmen, and I'm like, okay, now I got this. Now I'm gonna.
This show taught me so much about life and the world. Like, it... I mean, okay. It's really cheesy, but one of the major reasons why I always wanted to live in the city, or in a city, was because of watching that show, and the way they depicted it just seemed like such a amazing place that I wanted to be a part of. And like, I know it's sort of silly to say, but like, that show really did influence me a lot, and one of the reasons why I wanted to move to New York.
Yeah, and specifically Brooklyn.
Yeah, because when I first knew I was going to go to school in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn I thought about was Hey Arnold, or the Brooklyn my grandmother talked about, where you had those local, businesses. You went to the same Italian bakery or whatever, and it was like this very intimate neighborhoods with these communities that were tightly knit, and these working class people. And that's what I thought it was going to be like. And then I got here and it was like, oh, it's not quite like that anymore. But it's not like completely disappeared either.
Yeah, there's still remnants of it. There actually is sort of a hip edge to this show, like all the jazz fusion, and like I think we were talking about this as like, I think I said that, Hey Arnold was a pre-hipster Brooklyn, and then either you or Lucy said, Arnold's a fourth grader and listens to jazz. He's pretty hip.
Honestly, like, he's the main character, but I feel like he's the most, like, Arnold takes the most suspension of disbelief to believing he exists. Like, come on, kid.
Yeah, definitely.
Who the fuck are you trying to impress?
He's like, he's an orphan.
Ruth.
Ruth was only the first season.
Yeah,
Then they got rid of Ruth.
I had never seen the episode where they resolved the whole Ruth thing until I revisited the show as a mostly adult, and I kind of liked how that sort of, the idea of, they made it very clear that he had built up this projection, this idea, this ideal of this person, and then he actually gets to meet her and is like, oh, I made all this shit up.
Yeah, like, I don't know nothing about this lady. The reason why I never got to see that episode is because it was the Valentine's Day episode, and Nickelodeon didn't like to air holiday episodes outside of the holiday.
Fuck you, Nickelodeon.
But I think one of the other really, really good episodes, other than, like, Helga on the Couch and, like, the Christmas special, is Parents' Day, which is the first episode where we actually find out about Arnold's deal, like, with his parents and why he lives with his grandparents in the boarding house. Because before that episode, they didn't really talk about it. He just lived with his grandparents.
I probably didn't question it because I also just inexplicably lived with my grandparents, and both of my parents are alive.
Did you not live with your parents too?
My mom, when I was born, my mom was still living at home, and then she moved out, and I think it was just, like, monetarily easier for me to stay there. And then it just never changed, just out of habit. I don't know.
Well, that's neat.
Tooch backstory.
But yeah, in Parents' Day, it's a weekend parents tournament thing at school, and Arnold's kind of embarrassed because he has his grandparents, and it's like an athletic festival, But, he's feeling pretty self-conscious about it, but nobody cares. But then fucking Big Bob has to call him an orphan in front of fucking everybody. And that scene was, like, so heartbreaking. Because it was during the egg toss event at the game. And Helga was, like, making fun of Arnold or whatever and wasn't paying attention, so she got hit with the egg, and then Bob, being Bob, was just fucking railing on her for failing him because he wanted the best parents trophy, and he's like, I'm not gonna let some little orphan boy win this competition. And Arnold was, like, standing right next to him and froze and then lost the event, and, like, he just was destroyed for the rest of the day.
Basically, Bob is literally a monster.
Yeah, and even Helga was like, Dad, the fuck? Why did you do that?
Bob Pataki is more of a monster than the literal monsters Maurice LaMarche played on Futurama.
Yep.
I would rather hang out with Lur. I would rather hang out with Lur than a lot of people, though, let's be fair.
I think you and Lur would really hit it off.
I agree. And, Arnold goes home, and, like, he has this heartbreaking conversation with his grandparents where he's like, you're my grandparents. You're not my parents. And I don't want to go back to the festival tomorrow. And then he and Grandpa has a little heart-to-heart, and Grandpa, like, finally, like, tells him the truth about his parents, because his whole life he's been, like, telling him these fantastic stories, and Arnold just thought they were all made up, because his parents turned out to be, like, these jungle explorers or whatever. So we learn about how his parents met and what they were like, and why they left, and the whole shebang and shaboodle. But the part that really gets to me is when he goes to sleep that night, he has this really trippy dream sequence that sort of goes back to that first season. All about these stories he just learned, and, like, the way that it's edited and put together, and the music, and how it's, like, juxtaposed with his expectation for his parents and his grandparents fulfilling that, and, like, watching Arnold grow up was just so beautiful, and it made me cry. And it was, like, it was so well done, and there wasn't any really much dialogue like explaining. It wasn't like a narration. It was just Arnold remembering things and then interpreting this story he learned about his parents and having these fantasies and filling in these gaps in his heart, and it was just really, really beautiful, and it was great, and it was just one of the reasons why the show is so good.
Yeah, this show...
You should watch it.
Again, I can't remember any other, like, stuff in the 90s that would go through this much effort to be this deep and this serious at times and this real. Like, you think of... There may have been, like, some real shit in No, there definitely was. There was definitely real shit in Thornberrys.
Yeah.
But not to... It wasn't as good as this stuff.
Oh, no. It's like this would work... Like, Hey Arnold would be successful in, like, today's market where this year, the last couple years, where animation has gotten super duper quality in terms of storytelling.
I think it would thrive in the modern landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very ahead of its time in that regard.
And there was just so many little things like that. I mean, the whole arc with Harold and Big Patty was really sweet and sad.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That was great.
Or Veterans Day we were talking about. Yeah, the part with Grandpa was hilarious, but the part that got to me was with Gerald's dad and his story in the war and how, like, he ends up meeting that guy whose life he saved all the way back, and, like, it was just so... It was a great scene that you just don't expect to see. You know, we learned Gerald's dad served in the Vietnam War, but he was in the front lines. He worked in the filing office, but he just happened to come upon a wounded soldier who had been abandoned and saved his life. And then all these years later, he's taking Gerald to the Capitol, and they're standing at the Vietnam Memorial, and it's a perfect replica of how it actually looks in the real world. And the guy who he saved comes up to him with his family and is like, "Thank you so much, you know. This is the," he talks to his kids and is like, "This is the man I was talking about." And, Gerald is like, "Wow, man, my dad is a hero." And it's nice, like you take a war like Vietnam or like something like Veterans Day, which could get pretty hokey when it comes to patriotism, but they handled it so well.
Yep. We could basically just, like, pick a bajillion episodes and tell you why they're all amazing. But, like, we've been going for almost an hour and a half, so let's...
Yeah, this is another one of the things, if you want us to talk about it more, yeah. We'll do a separate podcast about this I'm Not Editing 2 podcast. One of you motherfuckers is going to have to do that. But yeah, we love this show. We think there's a lot to unpack about it.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen
one
it
thing
in a while...
I do want to talk about briefly. We talked about how this is pre-gentrified Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. The Hey Arnold movie was about gentrification.
Yeah, basically.
Less than I remember. It was more framework than it was what drove the story, because it turned out that the solution was this kind of really weird spy thriller where not Kim Possible shows up.
Yeah, that's the part I didn't like.
I thought she was just blatantly Black Widow. Like,
yeah, I didn't like any of that crap. I liked the beginning of the movie when it was
about gentrification.
When it was about
really
Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
It was about the neighborhood and those characters that you love.
And then the fucking the end credit song, the freaking
Little Romeo. When that song started playing, I couldn't sit. I was like,
I swear to God, I hate. That's the one thing about kids movies like that just have no sense of age. Mm-hmm. Like, did they seriously think? No one seriously thought that Little Romeo had any staying power, and they're gonna put it at the end credits of your movie. Ooh.
It was so embarrassing. I was embarrassed to be a part.
The Digimon movie soundtrack has more staying power today.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I still like Less Than Jake. Fuck you.
If any of you listening have any, like, horrendously specific questions about things we didn't cover, we will obviously shout you out because we're desperate for fan interaction.
And also, I adore this show and have committed so much of it to memory.
We barely need a reason to talk about it.
No, yeah. I'm surprised we took this long.
Yeah.